G'day and welcome to Talking Aussie Farming. I'm your host, Jono Weinstock from FarmCap, and today we're joined by a very special guest, direct from the Adelaide Hills, Dave McKeon, pretty much a guru of Australian agriculture, having gone from paddock straight through to government boardrooms and representing big corporate on the other side of the table, having seen both sides of the fence. Dave, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be with you this afternoon, Jono.
Dave, you've got a wealth of experience in ag across multiple roles. I guess just to start, what do you love about agriculture and working in ag?
Jono, I think like a lot of us who were born farm kids, grew up on farm, it really is ingrained in who we are. And it's provided many of those opportunities for us to have a variety of different roles. We know in a modern workplace, in a modern world, people like a bit of variety and I guess evolving their career rather than staying in one set career path for many years. And I guess that's what I've sort of I guess navigated that trajectory. But at the end of the day, really that loving those early years of time on a motorbike with sheep and the Kelpie, bit of time mustering or trading cattle, or a bit of time burning diesel, putting a crop in and doing some laps. It's those really foundational early years that I think really embedded a love of agriculture. But I'd say I'm probably not different to a lot of other farm kids who ended up in a variety of roles across the industry in ag, but also many other roles across Australia.
Look, it's very unique to have someone advocating for farmers who's actually been able to get dirt under their fingernails and driven a tractor, and I'm sure farmers really appreciate. Do you want to just walk us through some of these amazing roles you've had from, I guess, government through to running the GrainGrowers Association for a long time, moving into key advocacy roles with now president and chair of the Australian Agribusiness Association, which we love to come to those events, and the National Farmers Federation. So that's quite an incredible role. Do you want to, I guess, talk us through some of those roles and how you ended up today at Elders running one of their key divisions in sustainability?
Yeah, thanks, Jono. It's look, when you look back and reflect, there's been many learnings and along the way, but look, every single one of those roles has been a joy. I've learnt a lot and hopefully had a lot of fun along the way with some great people. Look, there is a bit of a trajectory that this, I guess, that this path has followed that I've gone through, and really it probably starts in those early days after finishing ag college, working in on-farm roles, in very hands-on operational type farm management roles. I really enjoyed and loved, that time on the bike, that time with the stock, thinking about the season ahead, or thinking about, how we could, I guess, diversify the business or grow that business. But there was probably always that itch inside me as well to see how I could create a larger impact and create that positive impact for industry overall. So, after a few years sort of at that on-farm level, transitioned in a move across to Canberra. So swapped the boots for a suit, and spent a bit of time in the Federal Department of Agriculture to really fundamentally learn and understand how public policy is developed, because a lot of these policies impact farmers on an everyday basis, whether we're talking international trade agreements and just as we're sort of speaking today, we've seen another one launched between Australia and the EU, which will have some positive, but there's also a lot of risk with that trade agreement for Australian farmers. But right through to some of the, whether it's farm business taxation settings or otherwise. So after a couple of years in that federal government sphere, and with a I guess a sound understanding of the policy development process within government, also probably seemed to find myself in a position where there was a lot of people that were working hard to make a difference for public policy, but there was a real gap in the market in Canberra for people who knew what was happening on farm. So that sort of then led me down a path then into those industry advocacy and organisations and roles, and stepping into a National Farmers Federation role. Again, saw the influence that you can have at a public policy level, but also how to, I guess, navigate the politics of Canberra and navigate effective impact and change within that environment, and bringing those lessons from the ground, from the farm, connecting with great engaged farmers right across the country, bringing their stories into Canberra and then connecting that in from a public policy design perspective. And I spent a number of years doing that at National Farmers Federation, and then moved into a role at GrainGrowers Limited, and was really fortunate with the growth opportunities I had there to support the team in the development of the policy and advocacy framework, and then sort of went on to lead as CEO of that organisation for a number of years before transitioning into my current role at Elders. So it's it may not seem like a logical pathway, but there were certainly many connections and steps between that made it feel very logical for me.
Now, before we get on to Elders, I'm fascinated by public policy and what it's like sitting in Canberra with a pair of dirty boots on around a table with some political figures and having those discussions. How much of an impact can these advocacy groups have? I guess, does it fall on deaf ears? A farmer's heard, and I guess how quickly does it translate to something actually benefiting farmers around Australia?
Yeah, Joe, from what I've seen, and I guess talking from my experience, but there's a lot of other great people that have worked in this space as well. There's two key elements that you've got to really focus on here, and one is sound policy development and a really strong policy development process where and that's the role of the bureaucracy in Canberra, the federal departments. To come up with that sound public policy element, to have that balance of the private good, the public good, and how they can get those policy settings right to hopefully stimulate and encourage industry and economic growth across Australia and support regional communities. What I did find within my time in Canberra, and again some great people, there was also a lot of people who probably I didn't feel were on the side and backing farmers, working inside roles where they had agriculture in their title, but they probably didn't have the farmers back. That's for sure. And there was a lot of people working in roles where they had no understanding or influence of advocacy. So even within many of my roles, I've tried to set up programs to get those policymakers out on farm, run some short tours for those policymakers to try and get them some of that connectivity on farm. If we think about, however, that impact and where that comes in, really that's where the politics and the advocacy comes into play. During my time and also well before my time and after my time, I've seen many ag advocacy organisations both put a lot of effort in and not get a lot of traction. I've seen a lot spin a lot of wheels. I've seen a lot make a lot of noise, but I've also seen some really impactful activities. One that stands out for me during my time at the National Farmers Federation was during an extended drought period. Where we had the members of the National Farmers Federation, the state farming organisations and the commodity councils, really needing that support of the federal government to make some changes to public policy settings and invest in some new areas of sort of support for the ag communities. We had a couple of weeks sprint of a process where we convened the members, we gathered their views, we made sure whatever we were going to put up was grounded in really sound grounding from a practical perspective. We put up the fight and took it up against Treasury, against Prime Minister and Cabinet, against other Cabinet ministers. Even we had at times the Federal Department of Agriculture briefing against us. But we found support politically within the coalition government and the ministers and their backbenchers who were in government at the time. And I very distinctly remember this sprint process went for about a month, and we had some late nights. We had a lot of those influential meetings. But at the end of the day, I remember the agriculture minister at the time. He took our package that we'd constructed. He took that to cabinet, and I remember him walking out of a cabinet meeting, ringing the president of the National Farmers Federation at the time. And he said to the president of the National Farmers Federation, you guys have done a great job. You put forward nine items that you wanted government to deliver for you. Mm-hmm. He said, I've got 9 of them across the line within cabinet tonight. We're going to do a press release tomorrow morning, and we'll be doing a whole range of really good things for farmers.
Yeah,
And
wow,
those impacts were things like changing the amount available that you could hold in a farm management deposit, for example. Those were making changes to the farm household allowance to allow the reality of understanding of how big a farm business is these days to manage a commercial scale grain operation. So just one example, but there's plenty of other great ones, but there's also a lot of tyre spinning that goes on in a place like Canberra.
That's true, but 9 from 9, that's a pretty good outcome. You'd be pretty happy with that, and crack open a beer after that, you'd think. And what about, drought resilience? That would have been the big key item on the agenda then. And other, I guess, what other policy areas have you seen change in your time over the last 20 years? Things relating to, well, particularly with grain, maybe. Was there anything significant with grain or water that you can think of?
Yeah, during my time working in the grains industry, it was about a decade after deregulation of the wheat single desk export marketing arrangements. There's still more work to be done, but we spent a lot of time supporting the consolidation of a range of industry good functions. And led to the establishment of a group called Grains Australia and consolidated in a whole range of different functions. And really this was about getting streamlined efficiency, but ultimately greater impact in areas like market access, in-market promotion, in-market education and support, and linking that through to the classification systems within our grains, pulse and oilseeds industries. So I do think that trade market access area is somewhere where we've seen a lot of change. Early on in my career, in some of those roles, we were probably in some of those earlier stages where we were getting big wins through bilateral trade agreements with our North Asian partners. After we got those big wins, we started to see those other trade barriers come into place in areas such as our non-tariff barriers to trade, some of the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, or some of the biosecurity measures that our trading partners would put in place that effectively blocked Australia out of those markets. And in the end, we even saw the Chinese government put on a dumping allegation against Australian barley growers into the Chinese market, which effectively locked Australian barley growers out of that Chinese market. Saw about a $40 per tonne drop in the price of barley to the farm gate immediately. So that sort of change from, a very, the multilateral trade approach through the 90s and the early thousands into a free trade bilateral agreement approach into a technical barriers to a trade approach is one we've seen a lot of change, and quite often we don't think about that when we're inside the farm gate, but the impact to the farm gate price that is received is really significant and takes a whole lot of work behind the scenes to make sure we're positioning Australia's grain in the best possible way in our global markets.
That's right. And if you ask any grain farmer, they'll complain that the price hasn't moved materially enough in quite some time, which is difficult to control, right, with global supply. So, there was periods during COVID when wheat prices climbed with a shortage of supply. So there are some upsides through some of these challenging times, as you would have seen. And we're going through it right now, I guess, with some supply chain issues and, availability of certain inputs might impact the ability to grow grain, and that it might, at the end of the day, it will impact the consumer at the supermarket, and the farmers might benefit a little bit, although have to bear, some of the increased input costs.
Unfortunately, our input prices have been rising more quickly than our commodity prices have been able to take hold, and that margin squeeze is really occurring at the moment, and is really front of mind. Unfortunately for the if you think about some of those key markets and for those grain markets in particular, unfortunately the price to consumer is not always felt. If we think about a bottle of beer or a loaf of bread,
that's right,
we've actually got less than 10% of that embedded cost of what a consumer pays is the raw product, is the wheat or the barley. So it would be great if we had a much greater proportion of that farm gate price reflected at the supermarket, and we were seeing that occur. But again, that's the importance of those global markets to provide a bit of that buffer and that market exposure globally for the great stuff we produce.
Now, just looking forward, or even currently, I guess, what are the key agenda items at the moment that advocacy groups are pushing for farmers? What's top of mind? I'm guessing right now there's a few key items being pushed: transport costs and energy costs. But what are the top few items that you think are on a farmer's top of mind at the moment?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, John. Look, I do think that that margin price squeeze and that profitability at the farm gate is a real challenge. For a lot of farming businesses, and even again this week as we talk, those two F words of fuel and fertiliser are causing a real challenge, and they're causing a real challenge on that margin at the farm gate. But they're also causing, some challenges right along the supply chain. If we think about from the farm input supply perspective, or if we actually look at post farm gate in the market perspective, there's a lot of challenges there. I was chatting to our crop nutrition fertiliser division here in Elders this morning, the challenge is real for them, and the time they're spending just to support Elders clients across the country get access to what they need when they need for this year's, particularly urea, the challenge there at the moment. So that's a really big issue. More broadly, this does play into a broader discussion on I guess our national food security or supply chain resilience work, and it's one with one of my current roles with Agribusiness Australia. We're doing a bit of work with AgriFutures, with the Federal Department of Ag, and really getting some of the key decision makers and operational leaders within some of our bigger agribusiness houses across Australia in small group settings, working with some of the best experts in the field on supply chain resilience and mapping, and connecting them with some of these public policy discussions to ensure that we can actually have really well grounded and founded decisions made by agriculture ministers, by treasurers, by prime ministers. Again, it comes back to that fundamental understanding that if you're sitting in Canberra, it's a long way from the eastern wheat belt of WA. It's a long way from Western Queensland grazing country. So we need to make sure we're providing that connectivity through if we believe we want better decisions out of our public policy makers.
No, that's right. Now, interestingly, farmers are extremely resilient and find a way to keep growing and improving productivity. And it's just another challenge that presents itself. But and Australian farming's ticked over the $100 billion milestone recently, which is a great success and should hopefully continue. I guess what can farmers do now, and partly with your role at Elders, I guess there's a bit of a focus on alternative ways to grow a crop productively and efficiently, and I guess farmers are always looking at ways to improve. So keen to hear your insights and experience, and it probably relates to part of your role at Elders.
Yeah, I think some of this comes back to the trying to focus on what's in your control. Quite the old adage that probably rings true in business as it does in many other facets of life. And when we've seen farmers focus on some of those key elements, supported by great technology, supported by great advisory services, they've achieved amazing outcomes. As you said, that 100 billion. Some of the untold stories that sit behind that, I think, are what's happening in the paddock. And if we think about, let's use WA's cropping industry as an example, with roughly the same amount of land over the last 20 years, if we look at the average size grain crop in Western Australia in the 90s, it was sitting at around 12 million tonnes. In the last 5 years, they've averaged 24 million tonnes. Right. So effectively have doubled their crop. The productivity gains there have been amazing by the application of some really cutting edge cereal genetics, conservation of moisture, through that dry summer period. When you also look at some of the work they've done on soil amelioration and then packaging that into a great agronomic package, we've seen those gains. Or likewise, if we look at the SA Mallee or Vic Mallee areas as well, what some of those farmers are doing now on very little rainfall, it could be sub 100 millimetres of rainfall, and they're stripping a 1 to 1.5 tonne crop. Those things are amazing. If we then take it back to within that farmer's control and around that fertiliser use at the moment, I think there's some real opportunities, to use these times to accelerate some of the adoption of some of those emerging technologies. Some of the things that I guess, from an elder's perspective, we're having a little bit of a look at the moment is the role of biostimulants and biologicals within a modern farming system. And this is, again, I think traditionally at times people thought you go organic and you sort of, you lean in that direction, or you've got a conventional system. I think we are seeing a maturity in the discussion and starting to look at, this isn't just about taking units of nitrogen out of a cropping system and not replacing them or putting a bit of seaweed juice on instead. This is about working smartly to understand, can some of these new biostimulant type products, could be a mycorrhizal fungi, could be another microbial type of foliar application, can they actually unlock more plant available nitrogen? Can we actually get some of those similar growth responses, adapting our current system that we're using within that? So I think there's some great opportunities there. Just as this is also that great opportunity to look at the adaptation of precision agronomy, precision agriculture, and variable rate technologies. So if with a limited available, nitrogen budget through a limited urea, access, it's going to be even more important to get the right product in at the right time, all those elements right, and the adaptation and use of variable rate technologies can hopefully take a little bit of that pressure off some of the edges, over the next little while.
Are you seeing much uptake from existing or new customers now, and do you predict there might be some more uptake?
Yeah, look, we're seeing a lot of interest. I'd say in Australia, and I was really fortunate to earlier this year spend a bit of time in the EU and the UK, looking at the biologicals market over there and sort of looking at the adaptation pathway into Australia, thanks to Hort Innovation and a range of Elders key suppliers. And really, what I'd say is from what I saw is, what we're seeing in Australia is probably pretty similar to where they're at in the UK, and we're probably seeing a lot of interest, but we're also seeing a healthy scepticism. We're also seeing, a real need to make sure that we have the data to back up these products, to make sure that we've got the efficacy right, to make sure that we've got the compatibility right of how these products fit with other products in a farming system. So, I'd say there's a healthy scepticism, but I'd say we're actually not in a bad position from an Australian perspective. If we reflect on, what I saw in the EU recently, the farmers, the advisors, the crop protection companies over there are feeling a lot of pain from loss of access to products, due to regulatory demands from the EU, due to supermarket demands. I'm also a big believer in, in creating your own destiny and not leaving that to others. So I also feel that from an Australian perspective, that healthy scepticism, but that strong foundational evidence on good science and good economics. We'll see a lot more growth in this area, and we'll see more uptake from farmers in the next few years.
No, that's excellently put. Look, farmers are traditionally quite slow to adapt to to new products, I guess, until it's proven. But I guess this might just trigger a bit more action being taken when they need to find a way through some of these challenging times. And hopefully the next generation, you might be seeing some faster uptake in new technology as well, hopefully.
Yeah, technology uptake's a really interesting thing, isn't it, Jono? Like if we think about things like minimum tillage, and we think, and there's this great story that it was a 30 or 40 years to move from what was happening in Western Australia across the East Coast, and now it's standard practice for over 90% of farms. But then we do have technologies where we've absolutely seen them skyrocket. If we think about, it could be a key example like the cotton industry moving from modules to round balers, due to the business case that sat behind, the labour use efficiencies and the economic metrics behind that. So, and aligned with their processing facilities. So, innovation's a really funny thing, Jono, and I think I always find it fascinating that some things, take a very long time to take hold that at the end of the day seem very obvious, but then some other things, you get some of those key ingredients right, and remove some of those little barriers, and they can really take off really quickly. And we've got really innovative farmers in Australia who can make the most of those opportunities when they make sense.
And I guess at Elders, you're probably at the cusp of seeing the uptake quite quickly through good times and bad. I guess Elders is right across the whole gamut of a farming operation, so you get some pretty good insight into the data and the uptake of what works and what's, I like the word, you called it skepticism. What was it? Optimistic skepticism. Healthy skepticism. I might use that phrase.
Yeah, and I think that's that really good thing, and that's something I love working about Elders, Jono, is we hear it real from the field every day. So it doesn't take a long time if something's not going to work, or it doesn't quite ring true, or it seems a bit off. We'll hear it pretty directly and pretty quickly from our wide group of Pink Shirt Network right across the country.
Pink Shirt Network.
Now with Delta Ag as part of the family as well, we've got a really sound footprint across the country where, we really get to hear and feel what's happening on the ground and hopefully support, more adaptation of new technology, in coming years.
That's right. Now, just changing tack a bit, I guess you've seen probably quite a bit of Australia in terms of farming regions and, from all commodities and regions. I'd love to hear what kind of favourite parts of the country you like visiting, and also from a production wise, what areas do you think are quite strong and prefer now or maybe in the future?
Oh, that's a really hard one, isn't it, John? It's like picking your favourites or picking your favourite kids, isn't it?
True.
You don't want to make anyone feel left out. Look, for me, growing up in the Western Division of New South Wales, that part of the country holds a real special place in my heart. And I really love spending time with the big open skies, and we had everything from heavy black clays and saltbush, open saltbush country through to red mallee sandy country. The variety there. The scale that is out there, I also really enjoy, and that also brings with it low rainfall and a lot of volatility. But that's part of the charm of some of those more rangeland type areas I feel in Australia. These days I live in the Adelaide Hills. So again, it would be remiss of me not to sort of mention some of those areas. And really, in my recent work at Elders, I've learnt to appreciate Australia's horticultural industries a lot more in some of those horticultural regions. I probably to date hadn't had a lot of exposure in some of that. Some of those more, whether it's the tree crop, the leafy veg, the viticulture. But seeing what on a small amount of land we're able to do in some of those more intensive horticultural regions, amazing. And there's some of those in some of those, it could be the MIA or the Riverland type areas where we're seeing it at a broad scale, but some of those smaller, more intensive areas are just as amazing, whether it's up the Queensland coast, north coast of New South Wales, or whether it's in areas like the Adelaide Hills. They're always fascinating places, and they change very rapidly as well.
Well, I guess you've got plenty of options to go for lunch nearby, haven't you? There's an abundance of beautiful regions and pubs and cellar doors at your footsteps. So I guess, and I was passing through Adelaide Hills last week. It was absolutely stunning, and it's nice to go visit, and it's not far from the city. So I guess you kind of get the best of both in the Adelaide Hills.
Yeah, I guess I like a lot of those areas of regional Australia these days. Though it's not hard to find a good coffee and a good bakery. And when you're out on the road, you want to support. You want to support a little local shop in a small little mallee town, or you want to drop in there. You want to have a cuppa. You want to support them and purchase something in their community as well. So although I love where I live, I also really enjoy those times on the road where you can I guess see what's happening in some of those little local communities all over Australia.
That's right. Actually, you just reminded me. I got in trouble when I got home last week. I have a tradition. I normally stop and bring home some relish for the family, and I forgot to stop and find some local relish. So thanks for reminding me on that. But that is part of the fun, finding some quirky little store along the way and picking up some local produce. And even at a local cafe, when it's not even for sale, sometimes I say, "Oh, do you mind if I can get some of that?" And the old lady in the apron pulls out an old jar and fills it up for me and charges me $5. It's very, very kind and thoughtful, and you can't really get that in many places these days.
Oh, that's what it's all about, John. And that's what I really love working in regional areas across regional Australia, or if you're on, as you know, if you're ever on farm, the generosity, people genuinely feel, the majority of the time, grateful and thankful that you've dropped in and spent some time understanding their business. Quite often I'm learning more than sometimes contributing in some of those conversations. Just because of how advanced and how innovative some of these businesses are. But that's really the joy of it as well.
That's right. Now, if I gave you an open checkbook and you could invest anywhere in Australia, what kind of farm would you invest in currently?
Yeah, so there's two parts in my in my mind that I immediately fall to. There's a head and a heart part here, so maybe just stick with me through this bit, John, because I think that's really important too, right?
Absolutely, it's not financial advice, by the way. It's just an opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, if I'm going with my heart, I do love sheep work. I do love the rangeland sheep work, and some of the areas of Australia that you have the ability to do that. I really love that from a what I love spend time doing and that personal passion. But I do think from a if I was thinking with my other sort of the other part of my mind on some of those areas where we're able to transform a small amount of land with a water asset and really see an uplift in productivity from a available unit of land. I think that's where there's some great opportunities still in Australian ag. So, we have seen whether we've, I remember as a kid on the school bus driving through country, an out of school bus to town each day, driving through country that was wool country, and then it was prime land country, and then all of a sudden we had rice paddies in there, and then a couple of years later we had, it was cotton country, and then it's moved to almonds and olives. And I do really think, with some of those, once we understand those limiting assets of what we're having in Australia, we've got a fair bit of land, but there's probably only a certain amount of arable land, and then water's a really limiting factor. So if we can, put those two ingredients together and some of those, advanced horticultural type businesses, I think there's plenty of growth opportunities there.
That makes very clever sense. Now, I look forward to our next Agribusiness Australia events. It's a great tool to educate and connect people in the industry, and that's why we go and our staff go to as many events as possible. And I went to the one in Adelaide last year at the wine venue. That was phenomenal. The Christmas party last year, full room, incredible event and venue. What's on the agenda this year for Agribusiness Australia? Keen to hear, and what kind of role is it playing at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. We look from an Agribusiness Australia perspective. Our local events have played a really strong role, we know, in sort of some of that local agribusiness community, and really helped form some of those connections. And look, it's part of the reason why I got involved when I moved to South Australia. Wanted to meet with like-minded agribusiness professionals in Adelaide, so joined the local Agribusiness Australia group, went to a few events, and really met a great crowd. So. We've got a large number of events on track this year, and we do know you also attend some of our Melbourne events. They're a really well attended crew down there. Adelaide, we sort of also have great attendance, but we're sort of also building up in areas like Perth, Brisbane, and Sydney as well. But we've got a large number of events on this year. We are working towards some larger events at the end of the year, so you'll see a lot of events where it might be a breakfast or it might be a drinks event and a couple of keynote speakers or a panel event. You'll see one of those pop up every couple of months in every capital city, and then we'll have a few larger events like our annual Leaders Lunch in Adelaide each year. Is locked in for this year. We had a great focus on international trade and some of the lessons learned from key agribusiness companies last year, and we're just locking down the topic and the keynote speakers this year, but it's bound to be a great one. A couple of other areas with Agribusiness Australia, we're really sort of, I guess stepping into beyond that, some of that collaboration work and building that great community within agribusiness is then starting to connect that into influence and connectivity. So the last couple of years we've had the heads of ESG of a number of large Australian agribusinesses, collaborating and working together on understanding some of the current reporting requirements they're all facing. Sharing their ideas, sharing some of their learnings along the way, and really helping position Australian agribusiness as a leader in that landscape. There's some areas where, at the end of the day, it'll be a compliance function and activity, but we can also lift that bar a bit. So we're doing some work on ESG there. We're also doing some work on, as I mentioned before, national supply chain resilience, which is now, just as more important as ever, and we need to get that right. We need to get that right on fuel, on fertiliser, on crop protection products, but also on our people and our data resilience, across the country. So we've got some great little projects happening there as well.
Look, the events are brilliant. The topics are very timely, with great speakers and events, and they're incredibly well run. So we always, make sure we try and get to as many as we can. So I highly encourage our listeners to sign up and join as a member or come to some of the events. It's great learning and networking with your peers all around Australia. So, from our perspective, we love seeing the newsletters come through and keep a close eye on them. Dave, thanks so much for coming on the show. You've got an incredible background and experience. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience with Talking Aussie Farming today. And I look forward to catching up with you at one of the upcoming events.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity here, and likewise, really appreciate connecting and hearing about the great work FarmCap's doing as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave.